chance to hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You can hear with some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good evening, K-Man. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, K-Man. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Well. Welcome back to another episode of Sabrina Speaks, the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. I'm your host, Sabrina. Happy Tuesday. How's your day been so far? I hope that everybody who is pretty much knocking off of work have had a very productive day. And for those of you who may be waking up from a sleepy slumber because you service on our front lines and part of the uniformed services, thank you for your service. I'm wishing you all a very safe shift, and your service is greatly appreciated. Now it is indeed it's that time. It's that time for another episode of Sabrina Speaks. And guess what? If you are loving all of the content that is shared in this place, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We're streaming live on all CMR Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram platforms. And you can follow me on YouTube at Sabrina Speaks, the number 12, and on Facebook, Sabrina Turner Community Activist. And thank you as well to all the new followers and subscribers. This space is ours, and we love all of you. So 936-8255 is the number to call and join in on this discussion, because it plans to be a jam-packed show today. Oh yes, the topic speaks for itself. I am not going to be alone, as you can see from the promotion. So I'm expecting, as we always deliver here on Sabrina Speaks, for this to be yet another very informative, thought-provoking topic that I hope will invoke suggestions, discussion, with even recommended solutions based on what we will be sharing here with one another today. So I am going to implore you all to pretty much relax and just pretty much hang with me as we go into actually this episode of Sabrina Speaks. We always start with motivation, and today's no different. And I'm definitely going to keep this going because I find them, I share them, and it is indeed a pleasure to share them with you. Today's motivation for August 5th, now more than ever, trust the process of your life. The universe wants you to be at peace with where you are before it propels you towards where you want to go. Surrender your expectations and make the most of your present by infusing gratitude into every thought. Acknowledge the gifts in your life that you have already been granted. Recognize your blessings and watch them multiply over time. You'll never be placed in a storm that you can't navigate your way out of. The universe doesn't want you to break down. It wants you to break free. Your golden chapter begins now. I hope that you like that, because I will definitely continue to be sharing those with you as we navigate and build this community. Now let's see who's here. Connie was first to class today. Welcome, Connie. I'm so proud of you. Hey, Jimmo. Hi. It's a pleasure to have you. Hello, Shaq. Hey, Miss Dorothy. Good evening to you, my love. And Shaka Zulu. Oh, yeah, the man's in the house. It's always a pleasure to have you all here. After you had that long class that went in triple and quadruple overtime this morning, oh my God, what a show. What a show the cold hard truth was. I mean, she pretty much take up her day, but I'm so happy that you guys were not only showing up for this class, but I saw you. I saw all of you. You guys are early as well. Hey, Anne, how you doing, my sweet? It is a pleasure to have you here. And Miss Rose, always pleasure to have you. So yeah, as we continue to build this space, today we're turning our gaze to a place, renowned for its prestige, beauty, and vibrant economy. But beneath all of that surface of this island paradise, a critical tension is brewing. The delicate balance between rapid growth and the urgent need for environmental preservation. And I'm talking about a place I am so proud to call my home. Yes, I'm proud to call the Cayman Islands my home. For years, we have experienced significant development boom, yet we have been operating under an outdated 1997 development plan, leading to what many experts describe as an ad hoc growth. Now, this isn't just about buildings. It's about our very foundation of the island's future. And we're seeing the tangible effects on our iconic 7 Mile beach. So, which is, battling severe erosion. We see it happening every day, a direct consequence of past aggressive development that replace natural buffers with concrete. And it is not just the land that we're going to be talking about. It's also our precious marine environment that's also at the heart of what we're going to talk about today. There are recent proposals on a ban of non-Caymanian from harvesting marine life aimed at protecting, our very own biodiversity and local resources. But, this also raises, in my humble opinion, complex questions about our even legal and social equity. So today, I took on this big topic. This show I hope to explore these pressing issues and pretty much the urgent calls for a new comprehensive development plan, the battle to pretty much save 7 Mile Beach, can it be saved? And the legislative efforts to protect our very own marine life. So pretty much a number of questions come to mind. What does sustainable growth truly look like for the place we call home? What's at stake if we don't get the balance right is also a huge question that should be on the forefront of all of our minds. So I invite you to stay with us, stay with me, yes, and let's talk about growth versus green, the development, erosion, and marine protection. But just a quick heads up. The content you're about to hear, including any discussions or opinions from myself, my guest, or participants, is intended solely for general information and entertainment purposes. It is not a substitute for professional legal, medical, or financial advice. So we're encouraging you to consult with a qualified professional for specific concerns. Now, Sabrina Speaks disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented here and today. With all of that housekeeping and what a mouthful. I am so pleased to have join me in studio today. I am very happy to say that we have a very special guest. We have a very special guest. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Sammy Jackson. It is a pleasure to have you here. He
Thank
is
you for having me.
Yes, highly respected attorney specializing in environmental and development law right here in the Cayman Islands. And he also brings a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective. I love his candor on legal and practical challenges that we face with coastal erosion and marine protection. So, Sammy, again, thank you for joining us here on Sabrina Speaks. It is indeed a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, and good evening to you and your listening audience. I listened
Yes.
with interest to your introduction, and I see that we need to broaden the discussion. I think perhaps I'll say it this way: what we lack, sadly lack, is the macro planning. We have the tools to do it. We have the legislative framework to do it, which, yes, needs to be enhanced. But we're not doing it very effectively because we approach everything piecemeal. We think of a legislation for special projects. There's a whole myriad of issues that we hopefully will have some time to discuss, perhaps not in depth, but touch on. So
well, we can graze it. I don't want, even though the show is slated from 5 to 6:30, to be honest, we can go to at least 7:15. Understanding that we are not yet on radio, the CMR TV is not yet up and running. Based on if it takes us there, we can go over. So we're not hard and fast for 6:30. That based on your availability as well. So I respect my guests' time, but we're not hard and fast at 7. Once the information that we're sharing here, this topic is very topical, one that's very important, and I'm quite sure that all of the persons who are aware of this will actually stay with us. And we have a very, I would say, engaging audience, and they join us at various times. So we can go on till at least, I would say 7:15, which would be history for the Sabrina Speaks. It's up to you.
I'm available.
Okay, good. Let's go. Wow. See, all of the students will be actually excited. So let's dive right in, Sam. And this is very candid. You can go wherever we want, and we know that this is participatory. So at times you will get some of our callers calling in, but just get it so that we can just follow this whole thought process based on the introductions. We're going to look into this 1997 document that is obviously this new development plan. Experts agree that we need a new development plan, and pretty much it's urgently needed because, and I stand to be corrected, as far as I know, the current 1997 document is just woefully outdated. And one of the things, as I said in the introduction, that's led to ad hoc growth. Now, considering this rapid population growth that we're seeing happening before our eyes, the whole immigration reform and trying to, I guess, slow it down, but more so, the strain on infrastructure like our roads, we're seeing the waste management, and you can break this down in bits and pieces. I'm not expecting you to give me an answer, bang. This is what this space is for, but just to set the tone. How do you, based on all of your experience, envision pretty much this national vision of balance in economic development, population growth, and this also includes the preservation of Cayman's natural environment, and guess what? Culture as well. So that's a jam-packed, that's almost 2 shows.
It could, we could be here months, but
a week of content.
It is correct that the 97 plan is obviously outdated. We are the framework that we introduced in the 70s, the Development Planning Law, now Development Planning Act, has had from its inception, and that was borrowed from a 1948 Town and Country Planning Act framework from Scotland. I believe we adopted all over the Caribbean, and all we've been doing since then is tinkering with the legislation. What do I mean by that? Well, we've done some significant we made significant progress in developing it in the right direction. Then there was some, I would say, butchering of the legislation by previous administrations. I don't want to draw any inference from what the motive was, but it's pretty clear that there was adjustment of the legislative framework, which is not good when you're talking about things like national development. And so the provisions were always there for the creation of a development plan. We created a basic document in 1977. I have it here. I have a copy that I don't even know if it's available anymore. I've had that for at least 2 decades. And we built on that when we revised the plan in 97. I say we because that is literally how I got my experience in planning law, and sort of fell into that niche that I know practicing. And because we had hundreds of objections, some 330 objections, I think, or 303, I can't remember which required hearings, and it took us years but we did a wholesale renovation of the development plan for Grand Cayman and some of the attendant provisions for the sister islands, because they don't yet have a zoning map, which is sad. I don't know if they want it, but perhaps it would be best if we approach zoning the way we need to approach zoning. I'll come back to that later in the show if we have time. But how the plan works is it states objectives and principles that are pretty much universal. And just to give you some sort of color to what the plan is supposed to achieve, because a lot of folks think planning control is about architectural design and the aesthetics and setbacks and all the, the nuts and bolts stuff. But the reality of the matter is we are supposed to be, and that's what I said early on, of taking a macro level approach. What do I mean by that? We need to figure out what's beneficial to the country. So why do we need to do that? Because Parliament ordained that. In 97, we enhanced the objectives in the development. That the general aim of the plan is to maintain and enhance the quality of life in the Cayman Islands by effectively directing development so as to safeguard the economic, cultural, social, and general welfare of the people and subject thereto the environment. Now, that's the sort of balance. So if to back away from that, look at it, big pictures that in truth, right, this encapsulates what some folks would say is a sustainable approach. We haven't approached it that way, but that's actually what's enshrined in it. It's frustrating to me to hear a lot of folks making discussions about these things without actually having the context or the background knowledge. Some even say we don't have a development plan. I've heard past governors state that in meetings. We do. We have had one since 1977. We enhanced it significantly in 97. And that plan is about the welfare of the people of the country. Right? So it's a socio-economic tool to make sure that development is managed in such a way that it's beneficial to the country. The problem we have is that we haven't followed that, or we haven't sort of applied the correct rationale as to how that's approached, coupled with the fact that we have had this, what I call tinkering from time to time. And I might have been involved from time to time, being honest about it, because I have clients, and when they hire me to draft,
you do, that's your job.
Propose to government, I've done that, and they've handed it over, and it goes through the requisite channels and gets amended. Not the butchering though, because there's some things I refuse to do. Among them concessions, etc. but that's a whole different topic. We need to really try to get to understand our legislative frameworks. And I'm talking across the board, but particularly for this topic today. We need to understand that we literally have the blueprint for life in the Cayman Islands. Yes, it does need enhancing. Yes, it does need updating. Yes, we have failed miserably in doing so for lots of political reasons. I have heard a past premier state in a public meeting, I was there and I corrected him, that we've never had a wholesale amendment to the development plan. And I said, no, you're wrong. We have. We did it in 97. Mr. Truman Bodden did it in 2 years. He pulled that off. I don't know how, but I know how. But we got it done, and we were supposed to, because those provisions I referred to earlier requires a 5-year review with the clear intent that every 5 years we should be looking at what we want to do to enhance the plan. And initially there was even argument about whether we could amend the 77 plan because we had done nothing for nearly 20 years at the time. We got over that hump by, reading the legislation and trying to get a better understanding of it. And we now have this effort has languished from one administration to the next. We don't have any real momentum as far as I can discern. I can tell you, Sabrina, I have volunteered free of charge my services to the CPA to assist them with this. And I did that because I feel obliged that, on the basis that he who knows should lend knowledge where he can. And
hence you're here today. You're here today.
Yeah, just exactly. We just need to get the right people involved and focus on earnest examination of what we have and figure out where we need to go. And we need to drag into it all of those things that these objectives speak to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about setbacks and heights of buildings and all the exciting stuff, many
Transportation and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's that, the infrastructure impact. So what is
Correct.
sustainability? Sustainability is building, only allowing development to advance in lockstep with all of the other essential elements you need, the necessary infrastructure. We just, they make sure that the people who benefit from the development are people who belong to the country. And there's lots of things that were done wrong there. LCCLs granted for people to come in and develop it, and they get to be able to build their own buildings, sell their own buildings, and there's no real economic benefit in that. So how is that not an offense? And if I can guarantee you this, if the CPA were to start attaching conditions to plan and approval that went as far as were as ambitious as to try to implement the objectives of this plan, they'd be sued in an instant. But at some point in time, we need to step up and face the music and say, we got to be able to control development, right? And a lot of my clients might not like to hear me say that, but a lot of them that are sensible will understand. We have all a vested interest in making sure we get this right. And the development plan amendment process is there. We have a template, we have a method. And the problem was in the past, people try to make it sexy by attaching this thing about Plan Cayman, when in fact you looked at it, it wasn't Plan Cayman, it was Plan Westbale Road, because it was piecemeal.
Right.
And it failed, or it stalled. Another administration came along, picked it up, and it didn't get anywhere there. And we just need to have, and there's lots of resources we can call on here. I remember way back when the UDP first one, not that I was a supporter of them, but I got surprisingly got tapped to be the legal advisor to a team of very competent folks, planners and architects, etc. Mr. Burns Conley, he was the chairman, and our purpose was to review not just the plan, but the legislative framework and make recommendations. We did an extensive report. Only some of those things were adopted. That was circa 2010, 2009 to 2000. So a lot of work has been done. Same thing goes for this Plan Cayman thing, but we need somebody who can sit down and take an honest look at it without being driven by politics and all of that. Just look at it and say, what's best for this country?
And not short-term fixes, but something that will pretty much embrace long-term holistic vision for the Cayman Islands is what I'm hearing from you. And it actually has to be successful in benefiting everybody that's living here. Because when you look at a development plan, it's so much, as you alluded to, that's encompassing that in that one document that it can't be piecemeal.
Yo, I'll give you a classic one. I've taxed a few friends of mine who, let's just say, they're on the green team. They advocate a lot on social media for restricting development, etc. To them, one of them the other day, do you realize we've had an EIA provision, or we call it an EIS, an environmental impact statement provision, in the development plan? We put it there in 1997. For mangrove areas, mind you, but still, that's been the focal point of EIAs anyhow, those sorts of areas. But to say that we didn't have that, and we've failed to follow the legislative framework. So, and if we're going to do that, what's the point of passing new legislation, right? We need some folks need to be held to account, and we need a complete restructuring of many of the institutions that regulate planning, or the central one being the Central Planning Authority. That needs to be a proper functioning statutory authority for one, without direct control from the executive, because guess what? That's what the Public Authorities Act calls for. That supersedes the development and planning framework and many others. The same applies on NCC, by the way. Same applies to NRA, everything else. They need to be functioning authorities with proper arrangements that function like modern statutory authorities like SEMA, etc. And then they be given the legislative remit that they need to do, and the duties imposed on them by law to do what it needs to be done. And we've failed because of a department of government servicing the needs of a ad hoc, well, a volunteer board source, so to speak. They get paid, but not really anything worth their time, to be honest, in my opinion. And a lot of folks step up and do the best they can do. I'm not criticizing anyone in particular. I think it's a failure of the whole of us, all of us, to follow the system that has been put in place and to enhance it and to protect it.
Right.
So
now the pretty much the act that's going in to look at all of those persons who are big on environment, not to say that we shouldn't, because we have one earth. Now, do you feel that there needs to be a clearer definition in these zonings by protecting pretty much what remains as our mangrove forests and our wetlands? Because some people would actually tend to think we're overly tree huggers and not looking at the realities of life, where that there's insufficient housing for those who can afford them. We're looking as though we're getting the higher tier, but at the end of the day, the wetlands are being compromised. We're seeing what's in the public space of, I should be able to do what I want to do with my land. But do you feel that this plan should work in harmony with the National Conservation Act to avoid any more blips that we've seen?
It has to. Here's why. We have a constitution. Unlike the UK and even the US, I believe doesn't have constitutional protection of property rights. We have enshrined in our Bill of Rights and our Constitution a protection for the right of a landowner or all property owners enjoy their property without interference from the government. Now, there are exceptions for things like planning control and environmental protection, but all of those exemptions are subject to one massive thing that everybody seems to overlook: prompt payment of adequate compensation. Now, what does that mean? That means if the government is going to restrict my right to use my land the way I chose to use it, right, within the remit of the legislative framework they laid out, or Parliament laid out, then I'm going to sue the government and say, you need to compensate me, because that's what the Constitution calls for. Remember now, the Constitution reigns supreme over all legislation.
Exactly.
And folks tend to forget that. And so they think that you can just blanket whatever private lands you want with whatever protection the NCC decides or deems to implement, because that they have a very powerful remit. But there's going to be a pushback. I know that because I'm in the industry. I've heard lots of talk. And let me give you the biggest example of that. We'll come back to that, I believe, later on, because I believe you want to talk about beach erosion.
I will go. We're just doing it in steps. We got the time tonight, thank God. So we don't have to get ahead of ourselves. Just to keep, in context.
We'll come back to that. But generally speaking, what does all this mean? Well, how do we achieve the sustainable balance that we need? Well, government needs to find a way to raise the funds to buy the land it needs to protect. Because the only how you can comply with the Constitution and the legislative frameworks and protect the land the way that sensitive areas, environmentally sensitive areas, is for government to own it, or some institution set up by government to own it. Well, along the lines of a national park commission or something of that nature, or agency or whatever. That it's sort of drilling down on that point. One thing I find sadly lacking is that we've never implemented national park legislation. We've written we've promulgated the National Conservation Law on the premise that we could figure out as we go along what areas need to be protected and give them different types of national park legislative protection. But we're not, and that process, quite frankly, and everybody that knows me knows that this is my opinion, has been perverted to some extent and hijacked. And that's sad, because we really do need, sustainable, pardon the pun, a sustainable approach to environmental protection. By sustainable, I mean legally sustainable. I mean, don't go down the road of believing you can do this until one guy sues you, right? Wins a huge award against the government. Everybody jumps on that bandwagon, and then it's chaos. And we got to run and do knee-jerk legislative relief for government because we'd be bankrupt And I'm not exaggerating here. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of land at the end of the day that are blanketed with some form of protection that is still in private ownership. And so I believe there's a realization that there's some balance needs to be struck, and folks generally tend to be reasonable. I have many clients who have compromised on their legal position because they're responsible developers. They want to, believe it or not, those folks exist.
Right.
And they want to do the right thing, and they don't want to fight with the government, right? So they compromise and they surrender, or waive their rights to get the full benefit of the utility of their land. And what happens as a byproduct of that is we are offending the development plan in some instances, because the development plan itself requires utility, maximizing utility of land. And that's a common sense.
Yeah.
Ideal. We have 73 square miles for Grand Cayman. I don't even know what it is for the sister islands, but we don't have a lot of land to play with. And we're going to come back to that concept.
How do you do then that balance? Because then we look into some of the suggestions when you looked at vertical and not just horizontal development, and just striking that balance. We don't want the high rises, yet you're acknowledging the obvious. How do we look at that, but yet still being cognizant of all of these other implications that you're seeing?
Well, if you don't allow developers to develop the full footprint of their site, they're going to want to go up, because they're going to want to maximize the return. That's a natural consequence.
Right.
Me personally, I'm no fan of high rises, not for Cayman. That's my personal view.
It's just, again,
that doesn't mean
for the purpose of this, right. For the purpose of this conversation is why I went there with you actually giving how much more. But then you have the flip. Let's flip the coin. You have so many that saying enough is enough. How much more? But what do you say then to those persons who own property that is zoned, despite you saying that there's none over in the BRAT that you're aware of? What do you say to those persons who want to then develop on their land?
You can't. Because the jurisprudence has developed around planning control in Cayman, borrowed from the UK case law that applied to the older legislation, which we've adopted, dictates that there's a presumption in favor of planning permission. I've said that many times. People get shocked by that. It's just common sense. You're entitled to develop your land. This is how the presumption works in principle, in practice. You are entitled to develop your land as you see fit, unless it causes some harm to a recognized planning interest, amenity to the area, nuisance to neighbors. Those things need to be weighed in the process. But you largely speaking, you're entitled to develop your land, and everyone knows that. Land without the development potential really doesn't have much value, does it?
Correct.
So this is what it's about. And we are going to have to find a way to compromise with those folks if the intent is, and this is a high level political policy decision that needs to be taken, that will then inform the legislative process going forward. What are we going to do? What are we going to legislate? Because I like to believe we're a country of laws. Some days I find myself doubting that, but that's all we're guided by, and forgive me for being a lawyer, but that's literally what prescribes how I advise clients. So I'd like to think that we still have a general duty and a general obligation to continue to adhere to legislation. But we need to create the legislation then. We need to adhere to what we have now and build on it. We need to get a better understanding. And that's why I agreed to come on this program, Sabrina, because I think there's a lot of public education needed.
Which
And this is pretty esoteric stuff. Not a lot of folks have delved into this. That's how I found my niche, because I got stuck in it by Mr. Truman Bodden back in the day when I was young counsel at legal. I got pulled into it. The SGs assigned it to me, and I didn't like it. I honestly I knew nothing about it, but I got deep-ended, and I learned along the way. And so I'm happy to share that experience as best I can, and that knowledge, because a lot of folks are talking a lot of foolishness. Let's be
Yeah,
blunt
and
about
people
that.
don't know. You
They don't
can't you
know.
can't really sift it out what's fact, what's BS, and what's not if you just don't know. And I'm hoping that conversations and discussions like this, topics like this, that will allow you the time where you're not rushed, that you can just break it down. And you can see we have some participation going on here on the communication from our YouTube, Facebook persons. And of course, the phone lines are open. But I'm hoping that what we are actually sharing here will actually educate and inform people or people. So when these so-called bills come up, let's say they're going to hear this forum and they're going to put some priority on modernizing this plan, that people will understand, and engaging in the conversation is simplified because we would have assisted in getting the information out, educating and informing. And I thank you. I thank you for putting yourself here.
And I'm going to say something else as well that might sound controversial, some might offend some folks. But what's sadly lacking is there's no readily available legal advice system offered to, and this is why I say the CPA. One of the reasons, many reasons why the CPA needs to be a functioning statutory authority. They need to have the ability to hire their own lawyers, right? When they need them. Give them advice on the fly, because I said this to them 2 weeks ago, because I had a matter adjourned, a simple matter about a very nuanced point, and they said, well, we're going to have to adjourn it because we need to seek legal advice from the AG's chambers, and because of that, that's what triggered this thought that I want to share with you. When I was young counsel in the legal department, we were on the fourth floor, the Tower building. Legal was on the fourth floor. Planning was the third floor. I can tell you, on many occasions, I got called by the secretary, the executive secretary, the director of planning, to come down to advise the CPA on some narrow point that they just needed so they could move on and either approve or refuse whatever they were considering. They've been hampered too, right? And I don't know why, but there needs to be some big picture thinking now on how we go forward from here. Seriously.
In your most humble opinion, why do you think the whole system is set up that way, that they can't go out and find independent legal counsel? I found that as one of the most daunting things.
It's because the planning department is basically the secretariat of the CPA, and the planning department is a government department. They're constrained to use the government's legal advisors. That's part of the problem.
So what's the risk then of opening up that for them to go to seek private legal counsel? Do you feel that it just be hodgepodge, or like have a network then of legal consultants?
I've acted for the CPA before. This firm has acted for the CPA before in that famous matter between them and when the NCC sued them, which I found shocking. I mean, we had effectively the two government departments, and that's what everybody seemed to miss. But the authorities got dragged in. And that was a sad indictment on the system.
In all honesty, hence me asking these questions. How did we even get there?
And if you set them up as statutory authorities, they have their own legal personalities. They can do that, right?
Yeah.
And they're independent of the government, and the funds don't come out of. If you set them up properly, so they're self-sufficient,
right?
And there's going to be impacts vis-a-vis fees, etc., that make them self-sufficient. I know from my own experience on many statutory authority, public management, finance law, obligations, etc., apply, and they need to become self-sufficient. The Public Authorities Act as well. They need to become self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and operate as independent entities with guidance from government. And if you set it up that way, then they can function properly. I think part of the problem, especially because they have the BCU, the Building Control Unit, sort of bolted on to planning. I gather that there's movement to renovate that. I don't know what. I heard through the grapevine that there's going to be a progression, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes now, towards artificial intelligence. And my response to that immediately was, maybe we need to deal with some of the natural stupidity before we move on to artificial intelligence, because
you still got to understand it.
That's and that particular department, BCU, is beleaguered with all sorts of issues they're holding up projects. And I believe that actually drives some of the concessions the government has had to give, because instead of doing it the proper way, where we have development bonds, for example, with milestones, like everywhere else, but not everywhere else, but most advanced countries do it. So the developer has obligations, and he is responsible for creating the inspection regime and all that sort of stuff. And you have properly licensed inspectors who are subject to sanction, just like how lawyers are subject to sanction for breaches of professional duty, and they can get disbarred. Then you're going to see a more robust and more efficient regime that works efficiently, much more efficiently than what we have now. And all of that is attainable. It just needs the effort. It needs the mass of resources behind it, and it's going to cost some money. But we need to get there.
Well, maybe with what you've heard along the grapevine is their step in the right direction of working smarter, not harder, and then those persons utilizing the services is dealt with in a more efficient manner. Let's hope that is the perspective.
One can only hope. I hope it works better than the OPS system. And again, I probably step on toes, but the online planning system has had its set of challenges, and I don't think it was thought through properly when it was introduced. It seems to be working better these days. Everyone is happy with it, although I can't even inspect plans properly on a computer screen. But there's a myriad of things that can be taken care of along the way. What we need to do is get the framework in place so that we can then build on that. We need it going in the right direction.
Correct. Well, this just isn't about preserving environment overall, because even when we go in, and I want to go into mandating, one of the things that they should consider is mandating coastal reliance and making sure that the setbacks are there, because it's just not about preserving the environment, but it's about protecting our very own economy and the safety of our people. But Sammy, we got a caller. Caller, good evening. You're live.
Good evening, Sabrina, and good evening, Mr. Jackson. Very, very interesting discussion. I joined you maybe about 25 minutes ago, and I just wanted to listen. But once you touched this subject about legal advice, I felt that I had to call. Now, the issue that you mentioned both about the fact that when you want to clear up a small legal point, you have to wait 6-8 weeks to go to the Attorney General, and then the Attorney General assigns it to somebody. And even when you want to follow up, they will tell you, we can't tell you who is dealing with it. You just have to wait until the advice comes. It's absolute nonsense. And the problem is because a lot of the people in the portfolio of legal affairs, where I worked for 12 years, just are not innovative. They tend to say, if you say, well, look, can we find another way of dealing with a certain issue, such as expediting legal advice? Their tendency is to say, well, but this is the way it has always been done. But humankind never made progress by always saying this is the way it was done. Now, there are always certain things which have got what you might call a respectable antiquity because they work. But once you discover a problem, you should be able to address it. You may be surprised that actually this issue, I did make suggestions when I was in government about how to deal with them, with the issue. In Australia, parts of Australia, they've got a system where, because of the problem that you've mentioned, what they do is they assign a number of senior legal officers within the Attorney General's office. They say, okay, Mr. So-and-so, you will deal with tourism. Mr. So-and-so, you will deal with planning. So-and-so, you deal with that. And those assignments are on the website. They are not secret. They are on the website. So what you would do is that if you want to clear something which is very small, you would go directly to that particular legal advisor. And then if it is simple, they will clear it. But if they think that is a little bit more complicated, then they'll say, well, you send something in writing, let it go to the Attorney General. You see the flexibility there? That's the kind of flexibility that I think would answer some of these issues. But this is something I can tell you that I suggested to the Attorney General's office and it was refused. That is why up to this day, it continues that people have to wait 6 or 8 weeks to clear up only small legal points. I just thought that I should clarify that.
Thank you
I thank you very much. You have a nice day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I can respond quickly to that.
Sure, go ahead.
The amazing thing is that we've regressed in that regard, because when I worked at legal department, I worked there for 5 years, and I was one of the councils assigned, young crown council assigned to that. It was myself and Kiva Reed, and our senior was Miss Julian Banks, a wonderful teacher. She taught me a lot about planning, right? And always encouraged me to learn. And the three of us were basically assigned planning stuff. So we had redundancy if one or two were off on a conference or at court or whatever, because our junior council we did both civil and criminal work at the same time. I don't know how I survived that, but we were assigned. We were the Crown Council assigned, and we get calls, and like I said, I would go down. I've had that experience, and that was even when you had lawyers on the board. Like I remember Alden McLaughlin, Sir Alden McLaughlin, when he sat on the CPA, and I think that was a sort of convention that they would put lawyers on the CPA. They tended to do that back then with all the boards. So you have somebody who would at least have the ability to say, hey guys, this is a serious legal issue we're dealing with. We better take some legal advice. Sometimes those things are nuanced, and a layperson wouldn't even think of it, right? A lawyer is going to scrutinize it with the legal lens, so to speak. And even if it's not an area that they're well versed in, they're going to be better able to identify a thorny issue that might arise, and so you have that system. But we had that in place, and I don't know what has happened. I have no insight into how things run in the government legal portfolio these days, but I see the results. It's not a pretty picture.
Right. Now, can we just dabble into 7 Mile beach erosion? Perhaps this must be the most visible and emotionally charged issue that we face here. This whole erosion on 7 Mile Beach pretty much is not just an environmental problem.
It's a disaster.
Sammy, trust me, it's an existential one for not only tourism, it's driven economy, and a deep part of our own national identity. What do you feel when you look at what's happening there? People are blaming it on actually the aggressive development that you alluded to earlier on, and we heard about is it BioRock? Is it BioRock that were placed to try and help mitigate the erosion? But let's get into that. Let's just hear your side on that.
Well, I say this as someone this is near to me, because I walk the beach. In fact, I've been proud of myself. I've been walking the beach every day for the last couple of weeks.
Kudos to you.
And there's lots of things that bother me. All the dead bees on the beach, that's my pet peeve. I won't bore you with that, but
what is causing that? That's another.
I have no idea. I have no idea, but talk about an environmental disaster, then something's going on there. I think we need to look into that.
Because they had a swarm the other day as well. Yeah, they had a swarm there by the governor's house too.
I don't know what disturbed them. I walk by there every morning. I saw the commotion, but anyhow, I've watched the beach diminish on the southern side, and I've seen it, and I swim down further down in the watermark area, and there's sand down there. There's a lot of sand down there. I'm not completely sold on this idea that the sand is gone completely, but I do not believe that it is viable to bring it back up. You have that longshore drift or whatever it's called, moving it down, and it's because of prevailing conditions. I don't think there's any that the beach is going to disappear entirely, but the southern end has disappeared almost completely in certain areas. Some of it is because of the quote unquote offending structures being built too close to the sea, but there's a way to solve that problem. The only way that we can solve that problem, and this is just my humble opinion, and I have had some insight into it because I've been consulted by a number of people to talk about it in general terms, and that's replenishment. And why do I say that? Because, and I'm not talking about pumping it back, because I don't think dredging it from down there, you then have the attendant risk of disturbing what's there. the northern side, I mean, of the beach, that's stable.
Yeah.
We have to simply replenish the beach, and we're not inventing the wheel. Lots of places do it.
But how?
My favorite example is the island of Sylt in Germany, off the coast,
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic coast of Germany. Every year, the government spends $600,000 to $1 million, I think, just moving sand around and restoring it to the beach because it slips out. And they do it in the off season, so that when the tourist season, and this is some of the most expensive real estate in Germany.
Right.
There we have lots of coastlines where governments have different types of programs where they restore the beach, and they do it. I guess if it slips out, then you can restore it easily. If it goes down the shore, it's probably more of a challenge. And I think we are the latter. So the best way to do that is find some sand, which needs to be carefully evaluated, because we don't need that ugly yellow sand we had down by public beach. But there's lots of places around here where I believe we could get sand of a suitable nature to restore the beach. And why would we do that? Well, the beach needs to be wide enough so that we have a shallow enough gradient that it stabilizes. So you look at all of the areas where the beach is really wide, like Island Club, etc. The gradient is so gentle that when the waves crash, they just diffuse and they don't suck back out they don't take sand when they go back out. And that's what we need. And we need to do that for another reason, Sabrina, because and this one might shock some folks. I've said this on radio, came on a program I did early in the year, I think. That area of the beach that the public enjoy the right to use under the prescription law is gone.
The high water mark is gone.
It's for the high water mark is a red herring. We have been, there's a certain group of people in this country that refuse to accept the legal position. You heard me talk about that earlier. There's fixed boundaries all up and down that coast. What do I mean by that? I mean fixed under Section 18 of the Registered Land Act. Once they're fixed, they're fixed. There's lots of myths about all coastlines are always ambulatory because somebody picked up a book and read something in Canada or somewhere else. Oh yes, we have riparian rights and all sorts, and people get confused and they think they know the answer, but they don't, right? You need to look at the legislative framework. And what does that mean? That means that the boundaries, the people own land in some areas now out in the sea. That does not preclude the public from going across that private land. Don't get me wrong, that we come into that. There's two things that overlap here. There's prescriptive rights, which are rights that are given to us by the Prescription Act that allow us to walk on any land that the public has used for more than 20 years. No matter whether it's owned by government or privately, it doesn't matter. But that area is gone. On the southern end, it's gone. You now need to wade chest deep where that area was that we could lay and sunbathe and our kids could play in the sand back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's no gone. That's underwater. And if we restore the beach, then we restore
who
that
is
area.
it for? But then who would it be for? That was an argument that I heard in a public space as well. If we're using this so-called high water mark, what part would developers and owners along that coastline pretty much have to play in this restoration?
The ones that the boundaries are fixed, Sabrina, they'll be fixed. It stays there. That's not by operational law, right? So let's assume that most of those boundaries were fixed at some point in time in the past, right? If they're fixed, then they stay where they are. And if you fill out beyond them, then you not only have a publicly accessible area, you have an area that's actually owned by the Crown for the public benefit. And the government can make that. So there's some tweaks we need to the prescription law, by the way. I've been working on that, agitating for that for like 25 years. I've literally drafted turnkey legislative provisions and it got taken up and abandoned. That's a whole story unto itself. But this is something that pains.
What do you think is the apathy, though? Because we're having this same conversation now, and you're saying how much years what is the biggest apathy? Is it fearful of votes or just poor timing or because it's you?
It's all sorts of things. It's special interest. It's not understanding that the public have been deprived of the right. They think, and here's the nub, right? If you say to someone who are stopped, who are barred from restoring their beach land, and their boundary is 25 feet out in the water, and they now have a fixed a wall, for example, where they've precluded obviously precluded the public from using, accessing, right? No one can say that the public prescriptive area is moved, because that's a hard line, right?
Right.
And then in any event, it's a question of fact, and it's easily established because the prescription law or act talks about the beach, the right to use the beach, and lots of folks are saying, "What's the beach?" I said, "Well, it's pretty simple. Everything." And I've had a developer client of mine. I had an argument with him. He said, "Oh, I have legal advice that is from the high water mark down." I said, "Well, I don't know what your legal advice is, but you should just throw that in the trash bin, because the law simply speaks of the right to use the beach. What's the beach? The beach is that sand area from the original vegetation line that went down. Because we remember now, the prescriptive act was in force in the Commonwealth before the proclamation of emancipation.
Oh,
1832. That's how old that law is, right? That's nothing new, and it vested and served many a country well in making sure that the public had right to coastal properties. It's been
so what happened to us here?
Well, we still have it. It's hard
Not
to
use it?
enforce because it's out of date. But we still have the feasible right to use that. And indefeasible means they can't move it. No one can move it. The only thing that to change is Parliament, and I believe it would be political suicide for any Parliament to decide to try to move to diminish or extinguish the rights of the public to use the beach.
Step back one little bit. You said that it's outdated, but yet it still exists.
Well,
if it still exists,
just
shouldn't
like
it still be today? Well,
just like the development plan, it's still good law, it's still enforceable. It's just difficult to enforce. And why do I say that? Well, because it talks about filing a plaint in the Grand Court, and it's governed by under the Judicature Act. The Judicature Act is an anachronism, and there's no such thing as a plaint in the Grand Court anymore. It's called a writ. So we just need to update the language a little bit, and then it's good. But I believe the courts will take a purposive approach to say, what's the purpose of this legislation? Is to protect, and we are going to ignore the procedural elements of it, etc. But the responsible thing for government to do, and I know we're going beyond the topic of beach restoration, but this is an important issue, because folks need to understand. This is one of the things that burns me. We need to understand more about what our rights are, and we need to be prepared to defend them. I've had a friend, he's deceased now, who went all the way to the rank of inspector. He was a sergeant, I believe, in the police force, when some gentleman who owned a condominium down at Coralstone Club came out there one day and tried to run him off the beach. I mean, he did debate about it, and the guy said, "Well, we own this beach. You need to get off." And he called me about it. That was way back when, and I had to say to him, you have the right. And in fact, if he puts his hand on you, you should arrest him for assault, because he don't have a right to eject you from that. But aside from that one instance, there's been many instances where we have had that sort of adverse engagement because folks are confused. And we need to, the reason we need to update it, Sabrina, is we need, and we can and should, as Parliament, should perform the legislative process of defining that area and fixing it. Right?
So it's a simple terms of reference, something expounding on what it.
How do we do that?
Definition is, yeah.
We look at the aerial photographs. We have aerial photographs of the West Bay Peninsula dating back to the 50s in black and white. We only need 20 years of that. Once we get that, we can figure out where the line is. We draw it. It's not arbitrary. And we say, this is the historical public prescriptive area. If somebody has a fence or wall in the way, then they might need to move them. And that might be sort of the thing that produces the lack of appetite, political appetite. But you can probably, as a government, negotiate or figure out how to balance interests in that regard. But it needs to be done. And when it's done, then we would have protection, and all of that that I'm talking about is great, and that's where I want to get to. But guess what? If we do that, it doesn't help us on the southern end, because that area is gone.
Correct.
It's washed away, and people need to understand that. And it's because of this idea that's been planted, this false idea that is planted by certain people in the heads of a lot of folks, even in government, that the coastline, the coastal boundary, the private the boundary between private and public land is ambulatory. That means it changes with the tides. That's absolute rubbish, right? That only applies if there wasn't a fixed boundary survey. We've had that disinformation was so rampant at one point. We had a past chief surveyor who issued the worst thing I've ever seen, a directive instructing surveyors to not register fixed boundaries on coastal property.
Oh, wow.
And that came out on an argument that I had with him for a large client where he said, we need to establish a boundary. And he said, well, there's no such thing as a fixed coastal boundary. And I said, you're wrong. And we did the research, and later on, a few years later, when Mr. Kurt Tibbetts invited us to address the PPM caucus, myself and Eric Ronnie, a very competent surveyor, we did a 4-hour-long presentation, PowerPoint presentation, etc., to them explaining all of the implications of what they were doing. And he was in the room, and he couldn't challenge it.
Okay.
And that tells me he wasn't the only one in the room. The director of environment, director of planning was there too. They all heard. No one said anything adverse.
They didn't know, or they were playing a blind eye?
I don't know. They didn't engage.
Okay.
But I can tell you what, we were ready to defend it. We literally had quotations from the law. We had diagrams. We had all the surveying stuff. The surveying law, the land survey law, the surveying regulations, all of that we came into play, and we showed them, and the Registered Land Act, and we showed them how those things intermesh, and what was being promoted was a myth. And so we have had government itself trying to impede the registration of boundaries, and it's all because somehow someone decided that was beneficial to some cause or other, but it had, and this is how these things come back to bite you, right? It had an adverse effect, because it literally has produced this notion now that because if the coastal boundary is ambulatory, so too must be the prescriptive area. It is not. It's
Interesting.
fixed. It's fixed.
Very interesting.
And on the southern end, it's in the water. So if we want to enjoy all of 7 Mile Beach, once again, it needs to be restored. And that brings me
we're going to go into that. Yeah, but we got a caller, because I want to go into what would be some of your suggestions, because we know that there's that whole bio-rock thing there. We see in certain other jurisdiction, there are groins that can actually change the view that we have with all of these rocks going out in the sea. But it would be interesting to get your perspective on it. But we have a caller. Caller, good evening, and you're live on Sabrina Speaks.
Good evening, Miss Sabrina. Good evening, Mr. Jackson.
Good evening.
It's a wonderful show, by the way.
Thank you.
It was just yesterday, I think it was. I was down where the old Spanish Bay Reef Hotel is. There are 2 homes next to that. If you're coming from Birch Tree Hillway and you come past that, there's a blue house, it's privately owned, and then there's a yellow house. And then you have Conch Point Homes. I watched as a person, the yellow house, the employee that they have, their gardener, he had this big old yellow wheelbarrow with these looking like big Tonka truck wheels. And he had a shovel. And he had raked up all of the seaweed. And I sat there about for half an hour, and I watched him pile up sand off of the beach.
Huh?
Yeah, okay. The big old bags, the big old brown garbage bags, black garbage bags, were there full of seaweed. So there's seaweed left in that sand, right? What has happened if people don't, you see, these foreigners come here and they don't know what is what. Earlier in the year, we had some nor'westers. So if anybody knows that stretch of beach, that time of year it becomes iron shore. Right now, it has come back basically, and it's a beautiful wide beach. But because the waves had washed up against his boundary line, his vegetation line with his chain link fence, and then he had sandbags put behind there. So the sand is gone from all of that now. So there's a big old drop down, and he wanted sand up there on top of these sandbags. So I watched his worker. And I said, no, this is not going down here today. This is my country. Enough is enough. Because it's not the first time I've had a run-in with this miserable white man that told me he brings his dogs down on the property, Spanish Bay Reef Hotel, to poop, and they don't pick the poop out. So he was spoken to twice by me and someone else. He cussed the other person out. So I said to him the day that all happened, before this incident, he says to me, we allow people to walk behind our beach. And I had to set him straight a couple of months ago, and with his wife, with the dogs, I said, you don't own that beach. And then he started screaming at me in Holland, you don't know who my wife is, she's a doctor. I said, who are you? You're in my country. You don't own any beach here. The beach that you say you allow people to walk behind your property there, it's 233 Calliste, Conch Point Road. I said, you don't own the beach. You own to the vegetation line, get it straight. I said, that there, sir, is the King's Bottom, the People's Beach. So yesterday I watched as his worker took the 2 big old truckloads of sand and throwing it up against these sandbags. So I waited till he finished loading the second one. And I walked down and I looked at him. I said, good afternoon, young man. How are you? What are you doing? Oh, he's taking sand from there and putting it there. I said, no, you're not. You're not doing it anymore. I said, I'm going to tell you what you're doing. You're breaking the law. I said, the people you work for, those owners up there in that yellow house, they own to the vegetation line. This here is Crown land. This is the King's Bottom. This is the People's Beach. You don't get to take sand from there to put there because the sea has eroded it. I said, let me tell you something. You're breaking the law. And if you want me to video you and pick up the phone and call DOE on you right now, which is Department of Environment, I'll do it real quick for you. So I'm going to tell you what you do. You stop taking sand off of this beach to accommodate where the sea has already eroded it. I said, that's what this sea does. Certain times a year it takes the sand away, and there's certain times it's going to bring it back. I said, but I'm going to sit down here and watch you, and I'm going to tell you, this better be the last load of sand you take off of this beach that you're not supposed to be touching. I said, you are breaking the law, and if you want to get in trouble, continue doing it. He looked at me and says, oh, I'm just going to do this one. I says, you better just do that one because I'm going to be sitting down here under this tree watching you. So he did what he said he was going to do. But the problem I have here is when people purchase beachfront property, they think they have purchased the beach. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they want to run you off of the beach that we, Caymanians, have enjoyed for generations. And this is the problem I have with anyone that thinks they have bought any piece of beach in these 3 islands. You have bought a piece of property and you cannot touch the beach. You own to your vegetation line and that's it. I don't care if the sea and the storms had tore up all the way up to your pool. You don't get to come on my beach and take sand and throw it where you want to put it. I said, you are breaking a law in the Cayman Islands, and unless you and the owners up there want to get yourself in trouble, don't let me see you down here again doing this, because I'm going to record you next time, and I'm going to get you all in some trouble. You know, and this, just a simple thing of going down to a beach access and walking behind some of these beachfront properties, and you go sit to the side of it, they don't want you even doing that.
Oh, wow.
And you're not on their property. You're on the beach. But because you're behind their property, on the white sand, they think they own the beach. And, you know, I as a Caymanian, I have had it. I really have. And Mr. Jackson, I'm with you. All we have done is allow developers to come in here, build high rises, and block the view that we had. We don't have any view on 7 Mile Beach anymore. And it's the same way down by the Marriott. They knew long ago, if you put in a pool bike there and you put a seawall, you were going to ruin the beach bike there. And for years, you cannot get from the old Treasure Island up to there. You have to get there hopefully it's low tide and you can walk on the iron shore and get through there and wade up in water and come up by the Marriott. You know, they build and they build, but what are they giving back to Cayman? Because then they build these big old condos and they put up signs and tell you, you can't come behind these developments. That is not right. And you know, enough, I just have, enough is enough. Because if you can't even go walk on a beach where you are from as a citizen of this country, then what else are we going to allow people to come here and do? You know, we make them come here, we're as kind as nice as we can be, and then they get an upper hand on us and they want to tell us, oh, you can't go there, and this beach access is not for you, or you can't come sit behind here. You don't own the beach. And I don't understand what these people are thinking. You do not own the beach. You own to the vegetation line of your property.
Thank
You know, I've just
Sam?
had enough.
Thank you, caller. I can
Thank
hear,
you very much.
I hear the passion. I hear that cry,
No,
and that is why I'm so happy we're having these type of discussions, and that we will have persons like Sam that would come on and actually just break it down and
educate us.
Right, and persons like you to give scenarios, because people probably wouldn't understand.
They don't, you know, we don't know what. Most people don't even know what goes on our beaches, you know?
It's true.
And the other property cut down these wheat and willow trees on his and threw some of it on the other property. And I'm like, you can't, you know, you people can't do this. You cannot do that. You know, we have laws, and when you look at them and you tell them, it's the same when I go there and you see them out there fishing and they're catching these little 5-inch fish. Oh, well, I said, you're breaking the law 8 inches. That's why there's nothing out here to catch anymore. It's like people don't care no more. They just take and they keep taking. And we as people just, like Caymanians, we have given and we have given. And now it's time for us to say enough of this. We got to preserve what little bit we have left. And all of these stupid high rises going up into the sky, blocking the sea breeze coming off of the beach. You can't even see 7 Mile Beach anymore. We can't see it. So we can't allow it to go on anymore. I'm sorry. I'm passionate about the environment because I want to be able to enjoy it into my good old age if I am living. I don't want to see everything destroyed. And I'm sick and tired of people coming here and telling me I can't go sit behind a beach that I have done for years. Thank you. I'm just fed up with it now.
Thank you.
That's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing, Miss Sabrina. I know you're new at it, but all I have to tell you is you have found a perfect spot for you. And we, the Caymanian people, we're behind you.
Thank you.
Because you know what? We need a voice, and we need to be able to come and say, this is happening here. This is happening there. This is our country. And if it's not for Caymanians to protect it, then who else are going to protect it? And I'm going to end with this. We voted no for cruise ship fares. People don't realize why it was done. I had a visitor here a couple of weeks ago say to me, why wouldn't you want a cruise ship? Why did all you vote no for the cruise ship? Here, I said, because the reality of voting yes for a cruise ship here would have meant no more visitors to our country, and we would have had no more 7 Mile Beach, because an obstruction would have been put there, and within a couple of years, you would have watched the beach disappear, and the reefs would have disappeared. And he said, wow, that is very interesting. I said, yes, it's interesting, because that's our livelihood. Without 7 Mile Beach, where would Grand Cayman be? Nobody would come here. You want to come here without a beach? I remember the Marriott in the 80s and the 90s. It had a beach. Now it's gone. And it's all because of foreign greed, and because we do not want to step our foot down and say, no, they need to go to all of these condos that have these seawalls where the Marriott is down there, where the sea has and the sand has disappeared. Tell them to put them down, all them down, and the beach will come back. Just look, a prime example, the old Royal Palms. The beach is back. It's common sense here. But the people that are doing the damage don't seem to have any common sense. And then they can pack up and go. And where do we have to go? This is all we have, these 3 little islands that we call paradise. But they want to come here and finish, destroy it, pack up and go. It's just like I said, if the cruise ship piers were built and the beach disappeared, the cruise ships would pull out too, because there's no beach. So why would they stop in Cayman? Well, nobody wants to come go Georgetown, walk around, and half of the time the stores are empty. Nobody's buying anything. Because why? Everyone's gone to 7 Mile Beach. I do it like when the cruise ships are in. I go sometimes in town. I walk through Cardinal Avenue. The biggest mistake we ever made was to pay for that. The stores are empty, and then you go down on 7 Mile Beach. Everybody's on the beach, or everybody's gone to Stingray City. And people don't understand, if you had built that cruise ship here, or piers, a couple of years, there would be no 7 Mile Beach. And I am grateful and thankful. I know there are many people in the cruise industry, but they can transition from that full time and do stay over tourism, which is more profitable all year round. Because we don't want to destroy what little bit of paradise we have left. That's what we need to harp on. We need to save it. And you are right, Mr. Jackson. Government needs to go on a buying spree and buy up some of this land so that we have it for national parks, that we can save this country. Because you look up, you might think there's a lot of land, but there's not a lot of land left, because they're filling up all the mangroves and destroying everything. And if a major hurricane hits here again, like Ivan did, God forbid, where are we going to be? Everyone can pack up and leave. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? This is home. And I don't care who likes what I have to say. This is home. And we as Caymanians need to take a stand, and we need to protect what little bit of natural resources and natural environment we have left, mangroves, swamps, everything. We have to protect it, because when it's gone, it is gone.
Thank you so much.
I'm just going to finish with this. I read an article the other day about how we have brought the blue iguanas back from almost extinction papers I read. And I was like, wow, they picked up on that? There you go. We're trying to save something. So why not try to restore 7 Mile Beach? But these owners of the hotels and the condos are going to have to learn that if the walls have to come down to bring the beach back, they're going to have to come down, because they shouldn't have been built that close to the beach in the first place. Thank you. That's all I'm going to say, because I am very passionate about this country and about the environment, because it all plays a role in everything we do. And if we destroy what we have, there will be nothing left for us. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. I'm continuing to listen. God bless.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for your contribution.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Sam, that is packed of emotion, passion, and
let's try to unpack it.
Pack it, yes, because there's a lot that was said there.
The problem, as I alluded to earlier, is the confusion over ownership versus the right to use.
Right.
Prescriptive rights are akin to easements. I can own a piece of land, Sabrina, and you can have a right to traverse it if you use it for 20 years under the Registered Land Act. And I'll come back and explain the difference between that and the prescription law in a bit. You can acquire a private right to use that tract over my land forever, unless I petition the court and say it's obsolete, or there's a bunch of things I can do, but it has to be a legitimate reason to extinguish it. But it's my land, it's my privately owned land, but I can't tell you can't traverse it because you've established that right. So too, that's exactly how the prescriptive right under the prescription law. The difference is prescriptive, and even the courts have been confused about this. I've seen prescriptive rights acquired under the Registered Land Act are registrable, and consequently they can be deregistered. That's something we need to bear in mind. Under Section 95 or 96 of the Act for either abandonment or obsolescence. So you don't want that regime regulating your right to use the beach,
Right.
because that's rife with risk. But what we have is that old legislation that says you have an indefeasible right to use the beach and access to sea and access to the beach where you have used it for 20 years continuous.
Mhm.
Continuously don't mean every day. It don't even mean every month. It means, a repeated pattern of use over 20 years. West Bay Beach, 7 Mile Beach, without question, there's a prescriptive right over it. It's just a matter of defining the area. And that's easy too. If we put our minds to it, figure it out. So to use the example of the caller, he said folks don't own the beach. He's acting on instinct. The correct legal position is they may own the beach. I don't know. You need a surveyor to establish that.
Right.
It depends on where the survey marks are, right?
Right.
But regardless of whether they own the beach or not, they don't have the right to remove ballast from the shoreline. That's a criminal offense, like for a small amount, right? And B, they don't have the right to impede the public if there's prescriptive rights that apply. That's a question of fact and law, right? If prescriptive rights apply, then they've lost the ability to obstruct anyone using that beach, because those rights are enjoyed, what we call in gross, by the public at large. Every member of the public. The Prescription Act talks about a class of the public. That's some kind of arcade. So it doesn't need to be the entire public either.
Right.
It might be a group of folks who lived in the area who use this particular beach, Smith Cove, for example.
Right.
And they can come forward, prove to the court, we've used this continuously for 20 years. No one can. The courts can't even extinguish that right, because the law says it's indefeasible. And a lot of folks have gotten away with doing things that they shouldn't have done because they moved indefeasible prescriptive paths to the side of their property under this other confused regime of development planning, beach accesses, which we prescribed in legislation, which are a bit shaky, legally speaking. I won't get into that now. But to continue to unpack what the caller was complaining about, he's right to concern himself with the fact that they're removing, material from the coastline. They shouldn't be doing that they shouldn't be doing anything of that nature without planning permission anyhow, if it's private property. And on top
which was what was the delay, sorry not to cut you, which was what was the delay where the last storms that came through, I was still in government then, that they had rebar coming out of the sea and all that sort of stuff, that they couldn't even remove that, and it was a risk. So what was actually described right there, if government had to wait to remove a risk?
Yeah, but Sabrina,
why would
honestly, there are some exigent circumstances where it's easily justifiable.
Exactly. I think there was a tree as well.
Rebuilding all these government docks that have been sitting there, post sticking out of the water since 3-4 years. That we got the government don't get a coastal works license to establish a dock for themselves for the public's benefit. That's crazy. I'm sorry. One civil servant can say, no, you need to come to me to get permission for me, allow you to do work on your own land for the public's benefit. I don't think we all go down our rabbit hole today. That's a whole different discussion. But it does.
Going back to what the caller had say, go ahead.
Yeah. So the best thing to do is call the police or someone. Not that you're going to get a robust approach to such things, because they're generally trivial in nature. But moving on from,
shouldn't there be like a hotline for DOE though? Should there be like a hotline to report stuff like that? Because one thing for RCIPS, the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, to come and do that. But if they themselves, let's say, are not that versed in that piece of legislation, to say, okay, well, this is my land. You can't tell me I can't do that. See where my boundary is or not. You see where I'm going? Should there then be a hotline for DOE?
It's a matter of choosing the uninformed versus the misinformed or disinformed. But again, going back to what the gentleman was saying about, well, we need to let them tear down the walls. Well, here's the thing. That's not a legal reality. I deal in realities every day. Legal.
You can't do it? You can't do it?
You're not.
Why?
They were given permission. They were given legitimate permission. They have a right then to sue government to say.
But under the circumstances with climate change, we see seawater rising. We're seeing in hindsight, the damage that it's being done right now that is obvious. Why can't we do what we have to do to save what's left?
Sabrina, this is just my layman's assessment.
Devil's advocate here.
All what we are saying is longshore drift because of prevailing currents, etc. If you swim out there in our rock area beyond on the south end of 7 Mile Beach, you'll see what it is. There's currents, right? And they move the sand down the beach, and maybe in 10 years it might come back. We don't know, but we know we can't wait that long because there are buildings there that are under threat. And it's all fine and well to say, let's adopt a managed retreat approach. Well, you know what managed retreat is going to, and this is something I've said on record, as reported in the Compass in a planning hearing. What managed retreat is going to get government is sued to the tune of a couple of $100 million, and they're going to be successful. Because these folks that come down here and buy condos, they're not spending $2. They're spending a significant amount of money to invest in Cayman, whether we like them or not, whether we, because of all the emotive, discussion on social media and what have you. That's part of the problem. When we get too emotive about things, we're not objective, and we don't inform ourselves properly. And I'm not here to say that folks shouldn't get up in their feelings when they see something that offends them, as a Cayman national. I'd be a hypocrite for doing that, because there are things that annoy me as well. But we have to, when it comes to this topic, we need to be realistic about it. And the only short-term solution to protect not only our most precious asset, because that's what I would term it, that our most precious asset, I would say, is 7 Mile Beach. When all is said and done and you evaluate the economic benefit, the social benefit, folks going to be, that's one of the things they can do any day of the week, take their kids in the sea, etc. That is our most precious national asset, and it doesn't have one bit of legislative protection. And not only that, we're sitting here with our hands in our pockets, or sitting on our hands, that should be a better way of saying it, and not doing anything about it when there's solutions out there. Because there's this plan to let nature ravage those buildings, because that is what managed retreat is. Take a look at Wikipedia. Managed retreat, it says, involves the purposeful, coordinated movement of people and buildings away from risk. This may involve the movement of persons, infrastructure, community. It can occur in response to a variety of hazards. If you look it up on the internet, it says basically it's a deliberate attempt to let the sea invade land. Now, common sense. I see one of you folks posting about common sense. Just take a common. Forget about me being a lawyer. Just taking a common sense approach. Given the size of this country and given the value of the land, you think we can really afford to let the beach be ravaged, rip up the walls and let it continue to erode? If we really believe that climate change is the problem and we are going to be inundated with higher and higher tides every year, what kind of sense does that make when you put the sustainability lens on that? How in God's name can you rationalize that? Because that's not sustainable, because the sea would end up somewhere in some parts near the road, like it used to be. I remember when the sea used to wash across the road where the Kimpton is now, the old road I'm talking about.
Correct.
Stormy Nor'westers.
That was the narrowest part.
Georgetown, you couldn't get past. So this isn't anything new. And yet the beach is diminishing on one end, and I think it's more or less stable on the northern side from about the midpoint. And in some areas, it's really nice and wide. It appears to be stable, hard packed, and all that. I believe we need to put in place sufficient sand to allow the beach to rebuild, to stabilize itself, and maintain it. A part of any beach restoration project going forward, if you're going to be sensible about it and you want it to be sustainable, you need to take responsibility for maintaining it. What do I mean? Well, if it's
would that be a collaborative report, public, private, with all? I mean, who would take that up? Because it's a funding and collaboration, I would think.
Well, here's the thing, Sabrina. And I know that there are folks that looked at this, and I can't speak on behalf of all the landowners of 7 Mile Beach, but if you look at it, right, just anecdotally, and you think, what's the enhancement, the uptick in value to every property in 7 Mile Beach on the southern end where the beach is eroded? Some of those folks are having a hard time selling their condos now, especially the ones that can't get permission to build a protective wall in front of it. Who would want to buy a condo on that end of the beach when it's subject to the ravages of the sea, and there's no beach for them to lay on, or for the kids to play on, etc. So you think about that in market terms. The minute that beach gets restored properly, all of those property values go up. That's an uptick in stamp duty for government.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't shy away from that whenever there's transfers. But there's an enhancement in value that you could use to convince stakeholders all up and down that beach to contribute. I'm not saying all of you would get enough money, but the estimates I've seen for sand to restore that beach to say 100 feet wide, 100 to 130 feet wide, are 20 to 25 million. That's what I've been ballpark, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at it in terms of what that's for us as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
That's peanuts. That's peanuts, right? We're talking about spending 60 million on schools and all that sort of stuff, and we don't want to spend $20 million on the beach.
Now that's a delicate thing because we got to educate our people. But I see where you're going. I see where you're going with the example.
It's a public area, and if you fill it out beyond the private boundaries, then there's no question. Jack can't ever tell you again you can't bathe.
Don't go and bathe on my beach, right?
It's not his beach. And there's so many benefits that come from that, right? And I
think I came across. Are you aware of beach bond, where you pretty much use a portion of the hotel taxes and or a special levy on beachfront properties to embark on these projects? Like you rightfully said,
there's all sorts of ideas being bandied about, but it needs to be something that's legislatively sustainable too, right? Like that.
Understood. We got another caller. We got another caller. Hello, caller. You're live on Sabrina Speaks.
Good evening, Sabrina and Sammy. Pray you all is well. I'm very, very blown away with the topic. I love it. But at the end of the day, I personally feel and believe CPA is responsible for this mess that we have right now with our beaches. They approved buildings to be built so close, seawalls to go so close. I learned during the election that since all of those rocks went out in the ocean there behind Treasure Island, from there went down in that water, we have been losing our sand since that went down. Nobody should mess with Mother Nature. Mother Nature is going to do what she please, as she please, when she please. And we know that. I've heard a lot of tourists coming, and I used to run taxi, says, oh, you guys are living on a gold mine. You guys don't build on the beach, on the water side, and take in the view. We have sense. We know that Mother Nature is something not to play with. And when she's ready, she's going to take whatever's on that and show whatever's on that beach. I just don't think it should be our government's or not a government, or the people's money to replenish back a beach that all it takes is to get rid of what caused it, what's causing it, what continuously is causing it.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So you're going to spend or looking to spend so much millions of dollars to put sand back out there. The same thing's going to happen again. Somewhere down the line, the same exact problem is going to occur.
That's why you need to maintain it, though.
So that's my thing is fix the problem. Remove whatever is causing the problem and let our beaches come back. Let Mother Nature do her thing and bring our beaches back on her own time. But I don't think it should be the people's money doing it. I really don't. Because they know what they were getting themselves into, or they should have thought about what they were getting themselves into when they go and buy a beach property and build so close to the water. They know why. Because then at the end of the day, they came here and find our beaches clear. And they wouldn't stop till they just pile up our beaches. I mean, you can't even drive along West Bay Road anymore and just look over, glance over and see the sea. They got these high walls up. They are robbing us of our sea view. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. But now that they have an issue, now that they have a problem with losing the beach, oh, we all supposed to care. Life is so unfair here in the Cayman Islands. It is so unfair.
That
I just wish
we
all of
all
those
have that
walls
problem
would
though.
be removed.
We
I
all
know
we all
we
share in
do.
that because we're gonna lose the public. We've lost it. There's no, you can't walk like you said from once upon a time people could walk. I remember as a young in my early teens when my cousin walked from his house in Georgetown to West Bay on the beach. I mean, we'd have to go in somewhere around Paget Beach and walk across a lot of iron shore. Well, we could get there. You can't even do that anymore now without getting wet.
Mhm.
And it's sad to see that the beach is gone. It's not. I'm not here to advocate on behalf of any developer or development group. I'm simply saying, if you want a solution, you gotta. The only way to do it. The idea that we can sit and wait for the beach to come back, knock all the buildings down. First of all, isn't realistic, and secondly, there's no guarantee, even if we could pull that off somehow without the consequent liability, that the beach would come back, because it looks like it's taking it down further north, and so if you restore it, you got to find a way to stabilize it, and I think there's methods to do that. Obviously, it needs a lot of expertise, so there's going to have to be some money spent. But the idea that it's been only beneficial to them folks that built too close to the sea, that is not. Some of them mightn't even want the beach restored because they don't have to deal with the nuisance of the public passing across in front of their house anymore. We need to think about that too. So in our haste to basically spite them to say we should leave them alone, let the houses fall down, we are depriving ourselves of something. I saw a comment just now about where the sand would come from. Well, there's been sands have been sourced from Bahamas, Cuba, as far as I am aware, and submitted. Now, as far as I believe it's the DOA, the Department of Agriculture, who has remit over evaluating the import of any soils. But they obviously don't consult with DOE. That may or may not be ongoing. I don't know. But there's got to be a source of sand. You look at the Bahamas, they have some of the most incredible white beaches akin to 7 Mile Beach. And my understanding is there's lots of sand there that would be made available for the project if it could go ahead. That's all I know. And I'm just selfishly wanting to be, as I came, and to be able to walk the beach again all the way up there and see people enjoy it, because if we leave it alone, it's going to, and it looks like it's going further down the beach, like the erosion, the line of erosion moves further down every day. Now, there's places where it comes back here and there in between the Royal Palms. It's because there's two walls that are there that sort of trap sand to some extent. But the truth is, the beach there used to be a lot further out.
Yes.
Right. And as to who can pay for it, I think we have the ability to convince the folks who own the properties along that waterfront to significantly contribute, if not fund the project. I wouldn't be so ambitious to say that it wouldn't cost the public a penny, and maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's valuable enough to us, right? Especially since we're getting the public area back, for us to put some skin in the game too. And that way we can say we get some say in how it's maintained, because it's on sitting on Crown property, and there needs to be an entire management regime. I don't know. I have no faith in groins in this idea that you can just take and trap one area of sand in front of a particular development, and I don't care who it offends. That's the consequence of that is going to be that it'll be attendant erosion elsewhere. Everybody knows that. If you build a groin, you probably need to build it on the southern end to keep the sand from slipping out into the harbor, and then just restore the beach and maintain it. I don't think that's rocket science, because there's lots of programs that exist like that all over the world, and we get to enjoy it. But we need that legislative reform that I've been preaching about, because we need to be able to, when somebody comes on and says, "Hey, I paid for this beach, I contributed X 100,000 or 10,000 or whatever," you can say, "Well, I'm sorry, this is a public prescriptive area as defined by law. Move away."
How difficult is it then to really just get something like an amendment? You do not have to do an entire rewrite, but actually key things that could actually help protect and enhance what we have, instead of doing an entire overhaul. how hard would it be then to actually just do an amendment to current legislation?
I could print it off and give it to you right now if you want. Even
So
has a
what's
government
the
letterhead in it,
problem?
because I might have had a template from previous.
But you see what I'm asking, because what I'm saying, instead of
All it
doing
takes is political will, Sabrina. That's all it takes, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to amend legislation, as you know.
okay, so let's say there's political will. What would be some of the key takeaways of embracing, let's put it out into the universe, that after this, you get a call. I need to have your undivided attention. Let me see what you got. Could you share, give us a synopsis of what that would mean for us as a people?
It would mean that when someone tries to tell you can't use the beach, well, the full effect of it would be someone who tries to move someone from a public prescriptive area would be themselves committing an offense, and they're subject to legal penal sanction.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're interfering with a public's right to use something that they have a right to use.
Okay, that's one. So how do we define this then, high water mark? Would that be one of the things in there for clarity and definition?
Forget about the high water mark. It's the beach. But the high water mark, the low water mark should probably be the defining lower boundary. The upper boundary would be the original vegetation line.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you want to use that as a setback envelope or something a little further away, then it's all the justification is there. You can't grant a variance anymore, because that might have been how some of those walls are built. But I want to caution the previous caller that when you say that these folks breached the law, they didn't do that. The CPA, I'm not paid to defend them. I challenge them fairly regularly, but you need to bear in mind that once upon a time the setback was different too. That 130-foot setback from the high water mark came along in 2003. I think it was, or maybe it was along with the amendments being made in 97. But it wasn't always the case. And the CPA has, rightly or wrongly, in the past, and there's one particular wall there that enjoyed that benefit. They because it was an existing wall, they were allowed to rebuild it in an existing position. No, that is no longer the position as far as I know. Right? Because there's no such stated right in the law. You don't have the right to rebuild exactly in the footprint. You have the right to renovate a structure, including a wall, and protect it and maintain it, but you don't have the right to remove it and put something else identical to it back in its exact position. That's a myth, a legal myth.
So how do we move forward?
We move forward. Like I said, somebody in government needs to wrap their head around what the problem is and how to fix it. And there are solutions out there. There's just, sort of a lack of appetite, political appetite to touch this, because lots of folks work themselves up, and politicians don't want to. I use a term by a former minister used once on me. He said there's a lot of political cowardice with that particular topic. And when folks are new to the job in particular, and they're trying to, you know how that is, right? You get it, and you're just trying to manage what you find yourself in, and you have this thorny, potential explosive project being proposed. You're going to want to approach that cautiously. So the way to get is start more public discussion, get some feedback,
just like this, and not be scared of the people.
No. Why should we be scared? In fact, generally speaking, why should we be riveted by fear of offending people to have a public debate? I mean, that is not a hallmark of a modern, sensible society. That you and I might not agree on many things, Sabrina, but you and I can sit down and debate them.
Correct. I mean, I threw out a lot of things here this evening that you said quite openly you were against groins. I just threw it out there for discussion. This space is exactly what that is. Doesn't mean we can agree to disagree. I mean, our callers came in, they called in, and we got another caller now on hold. But that is what this space is about. But where is the other arm? Where's the other perspective then? in engaging in conversations like this. You shouldn't be scared of engaging in conversations because nobody's expecting you to have the answer for everything or have the solution, because we're not all experts in certain area. But I'm quite sure that if we have discussions like this, understand what our people are talking about, you can come to an happy medium.
The only people, I say this quickly before you take the call, the only people who would be offended by a project of this nature going forward, who would be, for the want of a better word, compromise in their beliefs, would be the folks who are advocating for managed retreat. And that is a disaster in waiting. That you cannot afford to lose more of the island than that, you know, and the idea that you could just sit there, your arms folded, and don't take any sort of, create any sort of revetment system to protect us from the sea. How does that resonate with climate resiliency? You know what climate resilience is to me? Building up an area behind, and I can show you examples of it. If you look at Watermark, for example, they have this high rise. Everybody hates them. Okay, fine. Not really my style, but you know what it is? It's far back from the sea. That's why it's close to the road. And that's an approach taken by that developer. And on the side of it, you have two huge humps where the beach access, the public beach access prescribed by planning, and the fire lanes are, right? And what does that do? That means if you did that continuously down the peninsula, you would have climate resiliency, because you'd have a wall that's probably about 12 feet above sea level, or if not more, that when in a Ivan storm event, between the building and those humps would keep the island, that part of the island, from being flooded, at least to some extent, right? And so there are ways you can do that. Borrow ideas from the Netherlands. We have to protect with this idea, this little flat island, just sit there with arms folded and wait, let the sea erode it. I mean, that's crazy. I'm sorry. And if the motivation for that is that we need to spite these evil people, rich people who came and bought all this property on the 7 Mile Beach, that's even crazier. Because I don't mean to offend anyone, but that's my view on it. Because you cannot expect them to sit, right? They came and bought here. They're entitled to rely on the laws and rules that exist in this country, and this including the setback provisions. They didn't build. Most of them didn't build the buildings they're living in. They bought, and they spent millions in many instances buying it. And they are not going to be happy if the government says, "Well, sorry, we have this managed retreat approach where, you know, we're building to a fall at some point." That's going to be the end of us.
Right. We got the caller. Good evening, caller. You're live.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
It's good to speak to the legendary Sammy Jackson. And I'd like to say that I'm not crazy about building those groins either. In fact, I think those stones that have been placed out in the water down on the southern end of
That's the bio rock replenishment.
Yeah. That should be removed. And I believe that sensible people should be able to sit down at a table and have a discussion in which the government can maybe offer incentives to people who perhaps are desirous of rebuilding a property on the 7 Mile Beach, of stepping back from the water. I think it's utter foolishness to build a place very close to the water and then expect that the sea isn't going to impact you. But we're not going to change what has happened, except that we can sit down now and say, look, you know, the government could say, well, if you are willing to step back, we'll allow you to do X, Y, or Z. I don't want to say anything specifically, because I would rather that be a discussion that the government can reach some agreement with the property owners down there. But at some point in time, but
just on that point, it isn't all bad, you know, and this, you know, some of these folks might be clients of mine, but don't take this as me, you know, praising them. It's a simple, easily ascertainable fact. some of the high-rise buildings that have been built in recent years, Watercolors, Watermark, etc., right? The Aqua Beach project that has been approved, they've effectively been allowed to go up. Well, they've been able to utilize the 10-story limit that Parliament approved, right? Because even the development plan and regulation will be approved by it. But they've moved back from the coastline. If you look at every one of them, you compare them to where they're historical buildings, they're moving significantly further away from the coastline. They're doing that for their own protection, their own benefit, because they want a nice wide beach and they don't want to lose the beach like what's happening on the southern end. So you give credit to some of these folks that exercise common sense too, you know.
Right. But the ones that we have to worry about is the ones who are not exercising common sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for those who took the initiative to do that. But we need to achieve it all the way down the beach, and to some greater degree than we already have. Regarding the sand replenishment, have you given any consideration to the what would be the feasibility of recovering the sand that washed away from the 7 Mile Beach, but that has gone out? Can we recover that sand and put it back on the beach?
I don't know if there's been any. I certainly, that's beyond my competency, right? But I don't know that any feasibility study has been undertaken. There may be, but my understanding is that that's a no-go area for DOE, understandably so, because when you pump up the sand, right, you're going to destroy a lot of marine life, right? The better thing to do is leave that sand there where it is, and there might be attendant consequent shifting of sand on the northern end, and you end up with you're trying to solve one problem and you create another. The better thing to do, I believe, this is just me speaking at it, looking at it, you know, as a layman who, you know, might know a thing or two about how these things work. Put sand on the other end and maintain it. And if you have to secure it at the far end by a groin to keep it from going further south, if that's part of the problem, I don't know. If I'm saying if, then you do it there. But this idea you can put groins at different spots down 7 Mile Beach, that's not going to be just the aesthetic of that alone. And everybody, I mean, you research groins on the internet. I mean, and I mean, I studied them at A-level geography as a beach stabilizer. I remember all of that. And we have never had, no one has ever said this is a really good idea. And everywhere that we've done it, it produces this sawtooth pattern, you know, where it stacks up in one corner and caves at the other. That's not the aesthetic we want for 7 Mile Beach. Right. And maybe there are experts that say otherwise. I don't know, but looking at it anecdotally, I don't think that's the answer either.
That would be a national tragedy.
It would.
All right. So this thing about sustainability and erosion, right? We have a couple of issues that we're facing. One is that we don't have a proper sewage system. We need to find a practical and affordable way of dealing with the sewage properly, as opposed to just dumping it in a 50 or 100 foot deep well and letting it seep out into the ocean.
Agreed.
The biggest issue that we have with maintaining the beach is actually a subject that the government is trying to address now regarding fishing. Mm-hmm. And if we want the beach back, what we need to do is focus our attention of trying to cultivate and get the amount of coral back out in the water, and the architects of the reef, the fish, particularly what we call squabs, back to increase their numbers, because that is the source of our sand. And so, you know, thinking about how we're going to provide or prevent erosion without dealing with the source of the sand isn't going to lead to much improvement. Those things are going to have to be dealt with things like preventing people from overfishing. Like, so if you think about the shelf area in the Cayman Islands, it's not that much compared to other places. And when the population was smaller, it wasn't it wasn't as big a deal as it is today, I should say. And now we've reached a point now where the quantity of fish that is being taken from the shore is showing up, I believe, in the erosion of the beach.
Mm-hmm.
There are other issues that the coral face, but we need to be looking at how do we replenish the various species of coral as much as we can, because, and I know that'll take a while for us to recover, but if we plant them now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in 50 or 100 years from now, we will have a great thriving environment that will give us back all of the sand that we need. But
I like the idea. I think we need to approach that like they say how a man should approach planting a tree. You don't plant it for yourself; you plant it for your grandkids, right? Your kids and grandkids.
that's
Long
right.
term.
Long term.
That's right. And these issues are interconnected. Some people might just think it's fishing, but it's a much bigger deal than that. And I hope that we also need to actually think about how we deal with storm water management
That's a different topic.
in the island.
There's a whole other show, Sabrina.
Oh boy,
Well,
that's
I
home to
heard
me.
you were coming back tomorrow, Sammy.
Hear that, Sam?
I actually need to earn a living, you see.
You're right.
Well, Sabrina has connections, so maybe we can get you a stipend.
What are you putting out there, you troublemaker? No, but true. That is a different show. And one of the things that I actually wanted to bring up amongst a lot of things that the show in this space is, but what really makes this conversation and topics like that, Denny, actually more engaging and even create that appetite for people to remain and log on is getting persons who are willing to be candid like Sammy to come on. It's one of the hardest things to just get people to actually do this. I don't know if there's fair. I don't know. I really am trying to wrap my head around it. It's one thing of me choosing a topic. Coming up.
Hard.
It's hard to get people brave like Sammy to come on.
Well, I don't know if it's brave or we're past the point of actually trying to get people to like me.
Oh, okay.
I'm so done with that.
I guess you're over 50.
all I know is, Sabrina, I remember years ago telling a certain politician whose name I might have mentioned earlier that if you shove your head to stand like an ostrich, is only one of the part of your body leave exposed.
Oh, I hope you know.
And the worst part is when we're talking about this project, it ain't no stand to shove your head into. That's the worst part.
It's none.
So we really got to grapple with this one as a nation, and we got to be, collaborative and supportive of each other.
Correct.
On this, what you were talking about earlier regarding prescriptive rights, and Billy Adam and a couple of other concerned citizens in the country has been trying to get the government to register the beach access.
Don't do that.
You're saying don't do that.
Why not?
Don't register it under the Registered Land Act because, as I said earlier, it's subject to extinguishment under Section 95 and 96. You don't register indefeasible easement under a regime like that. If anything, we create a registry system under the Prescription Act and we register them as indefeasible easements. We define exactly where they are. It's going to take an effort. And something I wanted to say earlier when the caller was going on about the problem in the Barkers area or Sposemere, wherever it was, we need to understand that not every single piece of coastline there's a prescriptive easement over it. Some of it is still, some of it was never, traversed or used continuously by the public. And so 7 Mile Beach is easy. We know that it was used
We
by
know
the public.
that.
Other areas, it's not so easy to establish it. But we need to create the framework, the legislation that we can register those things to Dennis' point, but don't register it under what Mr. Bill and them, and I understand what they were trying to achieve. And it was a noble idea. The problem is, and it was born or misinformed by this notion that prescriptive easements, private prescriptive easements, which are created under the Registered Land Act by the same process, are the same as public prescriptive easements acquired under the Prescription Act. They're two totally different things. One lives for as long as the Grand Court says so, and the other one lives forever. And one is enjoyed by the public, and it doesn't attach the title. The one of the landlord that has to be attached to a title of land that benefits from it. It's a right in rem, we call it. It's a right in land. And whereas the public prescriptive easement is a right in gross enjoyed by the public, or that segment of the public that enjoyed that right for the 20 years continuously. So there's two different things. They're acquired the same way, but they're two totally different things, simply because one lasts forever and the other one might not. And one is attached to land, I transfer title, and the other one is enjoyed by the public forever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope that those who are involved in this would listen to the advice that you're giving here now and make careful considerations about whether what they're doing is proper or not, because I understand the sentiment that you're expressing, and I agree with it that we should be doing it indefeasible, and because this is not a fight that you want to have continually.
Mm-hmm.
No.
We need it settled, but what we need the MPs to have the courage to do that which is right. Let me while we're thinking about this, something just came to my mind, Sammy, and when they were doing the Defense Act, in there they have a phrase that says, "in the interest of the regiment." And for the life of me, I can't understand what is the difference between the interests of the Caymanian people and the interests of the regiment. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, you just simply need to understand who the regiment belongs to.
So exactly.
But no, I have my views on it, but what I'm trying to get at is,
who's the ultimate authority? Who do they answer to?
HE.
That's right.
People of the Cayman Islands or the king?
HE.
I mean,
It's
I
the
don't
king.
know.
It's the king. It is the king, because
Actually, it's the governor.
well, the governor is an agent.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah, but for us to educate,
right. So what I'm saying is that if what we're saying is that we're setting up things to have agendas that can be introduced under language like that, I'm really worried about stuff like that, and I sense that our politicians don't have the courage to deal with these types of issues, because if what you're actually talking about is the interests of the Caymanian people, then I think that is what you should say. You shouldn't have a term that seems to be talking about something different, because it don't make sense to have multiple terms to refer to the same thing, like the interests of the Caymanian people. So
Unfortunately, we're not talking about the regiment today, Danny, but I
no. I know, but what I am talking about is how concepts get slipped into legislation for reasons that aren't clear, and so I don't know.
At the Hansards? Have you taken a look at the Hansards? That's my go-to.
Yeah, it's usually
it's boring and tedious as hell, but sometimes there's gems in there, I got a few to share one of these days when I have to have a discussion about certain legislative frameworks, because promises were made, grand statements were made, and it's been anything but. But that seems to be par for the course. There's just too much intellectual dishonesty deployed, and political convenience and special interests and lots of things that unfortunately creep into governance. But if you're saying that you're querying a term in legislation that wasn't ventilated on in during the parliamentary process, then that's a failing the parliamentary process. Because if it's a unique term, you would think someone sitting in parliament would say, hang on a minute, Mr. Speaker, what's that term mean? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What are the implications of that? That's all about parliamentarians doing their duty to question things. Right?
That is the point that I wanted to make about raising this thing with the interests of the regiment. It's not about the regiment at all. It's about how our legislators legislate. And in order for us to get this right, I would imagine that they're going to have to withstand the fury of some very powerful people who want things done in different ways. And since they are in office by election, how do we encourage them to do the right thing and not
the weight
think
of the public behind it?
The risk?
The answer is simply this: talk about it, ventilate on it, agitate with your representatives, do the things that we as citizens are responsible for doing. We're talking earlier about me being brave. I'm not being brave. I'm just doing what I expect. I think it's expected.
Everybody else should be doing correct.
I say, I when I find areas that I fall within my expertise that I can speak to, I speak to them, and worry about the consequence of speaking to them. And listen, I don't have all the answers. I'm not always right, but I'm willing to weigh it in and have a discussion. And if you present a valid point to me, I'll say, okay, I accept that. And here's maybe what we need to do instead. And look, if we're not doing that, man, we're going to lose everything, because that's social decay we're talking about there, right?
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I say often that democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to be involved. Otherwise, we will lose as a country.
Winston Churchill said famously, democracy is the worst system of government ever devised, except for all others we've tried.
Right. Well,
I think that's encouragement to find something better, but we until we do, we gotta live with what we have, and just try to motivate it, because democracy only works if there's participation from the voters.
Right. But they have to also be informed and educated, and not be swayed one way or the other by just
social media promises, emotive talk and all that,
and paying of your light bill or sand that we are lacking, or you understand what I'm saying? We need to elevate, exactly. And this is why platforms like this, Danny and Sammy, are so important moving forward, because we realize that there's been a serious gap in people being able to have conversations like this, break it down in simple terms. Nobody is saying there's no dumb question out there. And there's so much that we can get out of this space as we educate and inform. We're not coming after any politician. We're not coming after any administration. We're standing for the people and in the best interest of our country.
Okay, you see that phrase there, standing for our people? You see that phrase, standing for our people? Many times I engage people, and what I get from them is that they want some board, some body, some agency of government to hold government accountable. And I say to people, look, there is no knight that's going to ride in on a white stallion to save us. It's either we as citizens in society are going to step up, make our voices be heard, and hold the government accountable. The government is not going to hold itself accountable. And you, if you want proof of that, then you just look at the things that they set up, called advisory bodies. All that body is going to do is tell the government what it thinks government should do. Government will say thank you for your opinion, and they will go off and do whatever they want to do, unless the public stands up and says,
This is what
no.
we want. This is the way we want to go. Yeah.
That's the only way
There's a great meme
accountability will
about
happen.
that says, I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about that until I realized I was somebody.
Right.
If you, I was saying earlier, if you look at ancient history, right? Not so ancient, but the Greeks, the reason they were founding fathers of democracy is because they encouraged debate in the public space. I don't profess to know Greek history intimately, and I'm not saying that advocating for all of their practices. I'm simply saying this: you need to have that kind of lively debate. You know, part of fist fighting and all that, but you ought to be able to have a debate on issues, topical issues, sensitive issues, and be smart enough to figure out how to navigate those things without mashing everybody's toes, but provoking, a response that might help inform you better of, because none of us have all the answers, but I bet you all of us have sufficient answers to take the country forward if we could work together.
If we could just work together, you're quite right. You're quite right.
Yeah.
Well, oh
So
my
I'll see
gosh,
you
look at
tomorrow,
us.
Sandy?
You can't hear the man say, I'm
Sandy,
going to
I'll
have
see you
to
tomorrow?
pay him. The man say he has to work. I'm quite sure he'll be back on once time permits. And I'm quite sure there will be other conversations that will delve out of this that we can actually hash back out. If there are specific things, Sammy, that you would want to come to just delve down in more as well as it relates to this, because I know we barely grazed exactly what. We barely scratched it. So there's enough content here in what we wanted to present in this evening's episode that he can come back, and it would be the first time you're hearing it from this space and definitely getting his perspective. So he will not be a stranger. I just can't tell you when, but I'll leave that space open for him, and we can deal with that off air.
I'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's so much more that's packed into what we wanted to deliver today that Sammy can come back on, and I'll be more than happy to bring it back up again.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Take care and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Sammy, any wrap-ups? I mean, for this segment, this episode.
I think we're giving folks enough to think about. Obviously, they should. I would encourage them to write into you and raise questions that maybe if we return to this topic again in the near future, we can address those things. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of folks get upset, and understandably so, about national issues because no one's listening to them, and there's a lot of propaganda being put out there, and people really dig their heels in because they feel fervently about something. But they need to understand there's a counter narrative that they need to listen to. Maybe they wouldn't be so fixated on their own beliefs,
Right.
And I hope if anything we've moved the needle a little bit tonight on that mindset, because it's badly needed. We don't need.
All I need is a smiley face from you if within the next, I'll give it 2 weeks, somebody actually reaches out to you. All right. That's all I need. Once I see that smiley face from you, then I'd be like, whoa, they were listening.
Well, wait and see what blowback you get tonight.
Another thing, what a mess.
I might not have any clients left tomorrow, so I might have all the time in the world.
No, look. We're gonna put only positive energy out there in the universe. And like we said, the last caller said, and you alluded to as well, that we need to have more spaces like this where we can encourage, educate, and inform people. There's nothing wrong with coming on here and doing exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I mean that is actually something that you should really consider if, God forbid, by having this open discussion, your reputation goes down. I think your reputation would skyrocket.
I've been doing this sort of thing for a while.
See what I'm saying?
Folks understand me that I don't dispense wishful thinking. I don't tell them what they want to hear. perform the necessary function of telling them what they need to know. That's what they pay me for. So I have no worries there.
But yeah, if that's it, I mean, I give you an opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks for having me again.
It is indeed a pleasure. I mean, your insights were sobering and definitely inspiring. And I'm really hoping that this conversation that is shared with you has shown everyone the pathway that we as a Cayman Islands really need to. It's not simple, but we can't just give up. And I'm so happy for you taking time and just sharing your knowledge and your expertise.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Right. Bye-bye.
Yes, there we have it. And pretty much as we wrap up this segment today, I just want to make a direct plea to everyone, our leaders, developers, every person who holds a stake in this place that we call home, the Cayman Islands. But we need to actually remember Section 18 of the Cayman Islands Constitution, which guarantees the right to enjoy healthy and productive environment. Section 18 gives us the right to enjoy a healthy and productive environment. It isn't just a flowery statement. It is a fundamental promise to each and every one of us, to our people. This section also reminds us that pretty much a healthy environment isn't a luxury. It is a constitutional right. And our leaders and developers must see this not as an obstacle, but to progress, but as a guiding principle. We can't use it as an obstacle at all, but it should be used just like how you have the Constitution in its entirety. That particular section should be used as a guiding principle when we make decisions to approve, and this is to our boards and councils, a project. You are not just looking at a balance sheet. You are making a decision that will affect every person, the ability to swim in clean oceans that we enjoy, that we sell, that is on all sorts of postcards. Our fishermen, the ability to earn a living, and our islands, very survival in the face of climate change, which is not going away. So let us choose hope over habit. Let us even consider choosing long-term reliance over short-term gain. Let us look at our leaders and hope that our leaders have the power to create a new vision, to listen to each and every one of us, to tap into resources like my guests, and pretty much a plan that honors our Constitution and really ensures that the Cayman Islands remain a special place for generations to come. As I said in the opening, the time for ad hoc growth should be considered over. And it's time for us to really sit back and build a sustainable, resilient, and truly Caymanian future. Again, let me humbly thank Sammy for joining me on this episode of Sabrina Speaks, and for all of the commenters, all of the feedback that we've received, for everyone who participates, for everybody who tunes in, be it even after this podcast ends. Your feedback is powerful. And to all of you, I want to thank you. I can't say it enough for logging on. But guess what? As I usually say, the conversation does not end here. And I am humbly encouraging you to get involved. Please come out of your shells, come out from behind those dark corners and just let's start. If you don't even want to be appearing on the show, send me an email, sabrinaspeaks12@gmail.com. Send me a WhatsApp on 936-8255. But we need you to get involved. We need you to stay informed. And we need you to be a part of the solution for sustainable Cayman Islands. Until tomorrow, it has been a pleasure bringing you Sabrina Speaks. And I hope that we'll continue to build this space. We'll educate, inform, and just live the life that everyone deserves, all equally. We got one shot at it. This is the crossroads. I've created the space. Have a blessed Tuesday. That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, K-Man, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.